Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jay. He's Maddie. This is the Yankee and the Brits Thursday night football pregame show. And we kind of had a wild week of NFL football.
Yeah, a crazy week, which we did surprisingly okay on the betting lines on because we've got this. We know what we're doing. So like and subscribe as always to hear what we're actually thinking and what we're doing. But yeah, we a crazy week with lots of upsets, but then also lots of when it wasn't an upset, it was just a total blowout.
Yeah, it definitely was. And it was funny because as you're watching the games, this is how it went for me in the beginning of the games. I'm like, oh, I'm winning every bet. Oh, fuck. I'm losing every bet. Oh, shit. Okay, I'm winning most of the bets again. Like, it was very weird like that as you check the scores throughout the first half of the Sunday slate.
It was fantasy football for me. I was like, oh, fuck this. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm finished. Another week done in the books, lost again for the second week in a row. And then I checked my phone like an hour later and it was like, I've got a chance. I've got a chance. And then it came down to the Bills game for me where I needed James Cook to make 2 points. And within the first quarter and a half, he was on minus 0.7 and looking like he was never going to take the field again. So I just didn't look at it again out of rage until 3 hours later when he'd gone for 13 points. And I was very excited about that.
All right. Well, you want to start this off and we'll talk some Browns? What do you think about talking about some Browns Ravens?
Yeah, I mean, the Browns obviously playing a really good game against the Ravens. The Ravens are playing Cincinnati this Thursday night for the pre-game show, so we'll talk about that more at the end. But the Browns, for me, the interesting point is Deshaun Watson had such a great second half. Like, that's the best that Deshaun Watson has looked since becoming a Brown. And obviously, is that a sign of what Deshaun Watson's going to be? Is the thought that's coming to my mind. But then reported about an hour, 2 hours ago, is he's going into season-ending surgery on a broken bone in his arm.
Yeah, can we please stop because that do you know how many quarterbacks I've went through in fantasy already?
I do feel sorry for you on that point, on that serious point. I mean, who have you had so far? Anthony Richardson gone down.
Well,
Deshaun Watson out as
Maddie, I gotta ask, did you switch some stuff up on us here? Because we're actually live, and I thought this was pre-recorded.
Not more than I usually do. I just did the description as always.
But then you must have tapped the YouTube
must have accidentally tapped the live thing
buttons. So we're technically live, and this is usually pre-recorded. So there you go.
Oh wait, okay. Well, live it is. Hello, everybody.
All right. Well, I just caught that. I'm like, hey, I actually think we're live because we usually record Wednesdays for Thursday show. Other the rest of the shows we do live, but Maddie's always traveling overseas and eating. Now he's eating fucking Vietnamese food and.
Yeah. I've accidentally made us live. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? It's good to see you all again. Sorry. So Deshaun Watson obviously plays his best half of football of his Browns career, and then you think maybe you keep the ball rolling, considering you're playing the best half you've looked since the Browns, and then they've gone, nah, season-ending surgery. That's it. We stay out. I'm curious about the decision.
I knew he was going to be out. I didn't know it was for the season, but a lot of people didn't know he was injured, so I tried to sneak him through in a fantasy trade yesterday.
Well, hopefully they're not watching the show, and you can still see if he's.
Well, no, now he says that he's out on the fantasy football app, But yesterday
Yeah.
he didn't, and I knew he was good. And they even had his projected points, and so I was like, "Ooh, maybe I can sneak him through." I tried to trade him for Brock Purdy, but it didn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't take that trade even if both of them were
Well, there
healthy,
was a
or you
lot more
shouldn't.
involved. There was Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Debo Samuels. There was a lot more, but I tried to stuff him into that trade to see if I could, and it didn't work.
Yeah. Does this trade go down as possibly the worst trade in NFL history? Like, have the Houston Texans, and we'll talk about the Texans coming up, but have the Houston Texans unknowingly won the trade?
No, the Herschel Walker trade is still the worst trade in NFL history.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. That's the one that immediately came to my mind. I was like, okay, maybe not, but just looking at this though, with the breakdown, the Houston Texans have come away with getting rid of Deshaun Watson. They now have CJ Stroud, whereas the Browns are now lumped with Deshaun Watson for who knows, who knows how long in terms of their contracts. But then the Browns also had Josh Dobbs buried in the roster as well, who they got rid of because Deshaun Watson came out. It's all very, like, I'm not saying Josh Dobbs is better than Deshaun Watson, but
8 teams.
How much worse do they look?
8 teams. 7, if you don't count the Steelers twice, got rid of Josh Dobbs. And we'll get to that. Don't get me started on Josh Dobbs already, or we're gonna fucking do a whole show on my feelings on that whole situation. I'm really sick of people acting like the Vikings just scored fucking Patrick Mahomes. But okay.
So
the Browns are fucked now. They're absolutely fucked.
Yeah, I mean the Browns sat at 6-3, which I mean not bad. I mean probably playing in the best division in football right now, so not very helpful. But the Browns sat at 6-3. They have the Steelers, the Broncos, the Rams, the Jaguars, the Bears, Texans, Jets, and the Bengals coming up. So not the hardest schedule, and I mean they do have Myles Garrett, who could be the defensive player of the year. And I heard Nick Wright saying he could be the MVP of the league if the Browns made the playoffs, because he would have been the most important in doing that. So the MVP of the league isn't going to be a defensive end. Unfortunately, that's just not the way that the voting works. I'm not saying you're entirely wrong, but the Browns do have life.
And somebody in the comments tell me if I'm wrong, but I think Ray Lewis was the last defensive player to win MVP.
Yeah, that's who I have written down in my notes. So please tell us if we're wrong. But he's written down here when I was making notes about Myles Garrett being the potential MVP of the league, which I don't think is going to happen. I think the MVP of the league could be a number of people, but I don't think it's going to be a defensive player.
They're already talking about Josh Dobbs for MVP after 2 games.
Yeah, well, I mean, Josh Dobbs to the moon, baby. That's where we're at. But I think the Browns still have an opportunity to go to the playoffs, but as you were rightly saying, with the Vikings, is going to the playoffs like actually what you want? Is that enough? Or would you rather just make sure you have a higher draft pick by not going to the playoffs?
Yeah, especially when you're a team that's eyes are set on the Super Bowl. There is a difference. Like after last year, Minnesota's eyes, 13-4, not the greatest in the playoffs, but they're like, we fixed this defense. We have a real shot at making a run. Kirk Cousins was fucking balling. Then he gets injured. So now you're going from, we had a shot at the Super Bowl to, do we just want to make the playoffs? And that's where the Browns are now too. They legitimately felt like they had a shot to make a run at the Super Bowl, but now that's gone.
Yeah, so they now have DTR and PJ Walker on their roster. Obviously, PJ Walker did beat the San Francisco 49ers. Let's not forget that. They beat the 49ers with PJ Walker. So this defense is legit. This defense is perhaps one of the best in the league. You've got the Ravens, you've got the Jets, you've got Cowboys, Eagles, Browns, all in that conversation for best. 49ers now with Chase Young as well, of the best defenses in the league. So they do have an opportunity. And I think their best bet for the season is to put out DTR and really see what they've got in him, even if we think he's not ready. I do think it's time to have a look at him, especially with Deshaun Watson's injury-prone nature, it seems.
I completely disagree. I think it's a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea to take a late round quarterback and make him start. Like, it's a developmental project. I didn't love that they were going to play Jaron Hall. I just figured, fuck it, with the Vikings, let's see what he got. I do not like playing these guys in their first season, but we'll see what they decide to do. I feel like you can ruin a young quarterback.
The defenses that just to put that into perspective, the defenses that they're coming up against are the Steelers, who solid defense, divisional opponent as well. The Broncos, who since giving up 70 now lead the league in turn, or they have nine turnovers in that time since giving up 70. You then have the Rams, who obviously have a defensive line to worry about. The Jags have one of the top defenses in the league. You have the Bears, who don't get any pressure, so maybe the Bears is where you throw them at. And then you've got the Texans, who don't really get a lot of pressure on Christmas Day, but then you've got to go to the Jets and the Bengals again, who have excellent defenses as well. So maybe not the best time on second thoughts. However, I do think you need to have a look at the guy. Like, you do need to have a look. Although PJ Walker is a serviceable quarterback and
why do you need to have a look at him this year?
Because if you have to wait out Deshaun Watson's contract, right? Like, you have to wait out his contract anyway, and his contract's another 2 years. So if Deshaun Watson's healthy for the next 2 years, you don't get to look at him until the third year, and then you're like, right, well, this is the last year we possibly have.
Yeah, that's what the exact same thing that happened with Jordan Love.
Yeah, and look how that worked out.
Yeah, but you're comparing the two players, not as we would say, the process.
Fair. I think you trot out PJ Walker against these defenses that they're going up against, and I think if PJ Walker's playing like shit, then you give DTR a go, just to see if you can fire something up there.
Yeah, I just don't like that they throw these young guys to the wolves, and then next thing you know, they're career backups or they're out of the fucking league because the coaches didn't handle them correctly. I think that happens a lot in the NFL.
So I think the better process is you give them a go, and if they're shit, you don't beat them up for it. You don't. Yeah,
that's not how that works, though.
Yeah, I know, but that's the process. That should be the process. It's like, or if you're shit, you go, oh, okay, well, we'll bring you out, we'll protect you a little bit more, and then we'll give you another go later on. I think that's the correct process here. But also, your confidence is going to get not getting the shit kicked out of you by defensive lines the entire time and throwing 4 interceptions.
So my takeaway was from that game is the Browns played out of their minds. The Ravens didn't play as good as they should have, and it was still that close of a game.
Yeah, I think defensively, the Browns played an excellent game, which is weird saying that when they gave up 31 points. But those points came from other places. Those points are not defense against the defense. A lot of the time, they're poor offensive production issues and points there. So I think the Browns defense played absolutely out of its mind. I thought it played incredibly, and Deshaun Watson played his best half of football as a Brown, so that's going to help as well. The Ravens, it felt like they were going to run away with it and put another beat down on another good team and set a statement, especially when OBJ seemed to roll back the clock and take a slant to the house from 30 yards out. I was like, oh, okay, this could get messy now. But the Browns kept on fighting. They kept on being in there. And that's what AFC North football is, or all divisional rounds is kind of like. But then you have the Ravens, and Lamar Jackson has these games, right, where he can't get you over the line. It's why he's not great in the playoffs right now. It's in those small moments Lamar Jackson doesn't make the throw. Lamar Jackson doesn't break the tackle. And that should be a worry for the Ravens going forward into playoff football.
I'm not worried about the Ravens going into the playoffs. I think that Lamar gets a lot more hate than he deserves. I mean, they played probably the best defense in the league, and he still went for 223 and 1 touchdown. It's the 2 interceptions that fucking hurt, but he had 8 yards or 8 carries for 41 yards too. You take out those interceptions though, and that game's not even fucking close.
Yeah, he threw the intercept, and it's 223 off 13 completions for 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Like 13 completions in the game. Like one of those completions is a touchdown for 40 yards that goes to Odell Beckham. That is touchdown, a 40-yard touchdown. So for me, that stat line reads as he didn't make the plays. He did make the turnovers, but you are incredibly right in saying that this is one of the best defenses in football. It also doesn't help that the Browns are able to control the clock. Jerome Ford is a great find for them. And obviously Nick Chubb being out is obviously not good for the Browns at all, but Jerome Ford is a great find for them. He ran 17 carries for 107 yards. Amari Cooper's always puts up decent numbers, so 6 receptions for 98 yards. When you compare that to the Ravens, Lamar Jackson was their leading rusher for 41 yards. What I want to know is, why is Keaton Mitchell only getting 3 carries when he makes 35 yards with those 3 carries and has explosive plays? Like I know he's your explosive guy. I'm not saying he's your bell cow back, but 3 carries is not a lot.
Well, because they didn't have a lot of offensive possession. Like they didn't have a ton of time on the field. So how many plays get ran had a lot to do with how much your second back gets it. My whole thing is they're 7-3 and people are acting like the fucking roof is caving in on the Ravens. And I think it's kind of a crazy thought, because who's better than them in the AFC North right now?
So a crazy stat is the Ravens have only trailed in games. If you have it in terms of minutes, it's like they've only trailed for 20 minutes this season, and we're in week 10. So like a quarter and a half they've trailed for this season when you've added up all their time trailing, which is, to me, it suggests that when they get into close games, they don't get it done, but they can easily blow teams out, which is why I would worry going into playoff football. But it also makes them weirdly the best 7-3 team we've ever seen, because everybody else who has less time trailing than them, it's teams that were 10-0 at this point. So teams like the 07 Patriots, who went undefeated, had the same stat at this point in the season. So it suggests to me that they're not getting it done and over the line, but it also suggests to me that we shouldn't really worry about it right now. It's not a worry. Let's see what happens as we go forward.
All right. Well, I don't know what the Browns do now. I think they're pretty much dead with their quarterback situation. So let's talk about another game that was a fucking nasty blowout. 49ers at the Jags, 34-3. I did not see that coming.
No. That's a bet that we lost on that one. Did you win that one? Did you pick the 49ers for that one in the end? No, I picked the Jags as well. Yeah. The 49ers are back on track. Is that what that says to you? Their defense looks scary. Like Bosa and Chase Young is a scary tandem, is my takeaway from that game.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that Kittle had like 116 yards on 3 receptions.
Yeah, I'm wondering what kind of happened to the Jags defense in this game. as well. I'm no defensive mastermind. I'm not. I'd say in terms of my punditry, breaking down defenses is probably my weakest point at this current moment in time. But it seemed like they were just a step behind the 49ers all game. And it seems like they were out-schemed and out-coached from the very jump.
Yeah, they just had a bad game. I'm going to chalk it up to one of those fucking just terrible games because I think the Jags are way better than they looked in that game.
Yeah, I mean, 4 turnovers against this 49ers team. It's a classic example of what the 49ers and actually what the Cowboys are as well. They're front-running teams. If these guys are able to run downhill, if they win the turnover battle substantially, they're going to blow you out. And that's the way that both of these teams play. Once their pass rush doesn't have to worry about the run anymore, once they are able to just consolidate, run downhill, they're going to blow you out. And it kind of steamrolled into the Jags. This 2 fumbles, 2 interceptions. The Jags, Trevor Lawrence throwing 17 for 29 on 185 yards. I think the big thing for them was Travis Etienne just couldn't get going.
Yeah, the 2 picks fucking killed them.
Yeah, picks killed them. Fumbles killed them. Travis Etienne couldn't get going. They run a lot of play action, so they're going to struggle from there. And Brock Purdy made no mistakes, and that's all Brock Purdy has to do. I think the question for the 49ers now is, do we trust them to stay healthy? Because when they're healthy, this is who they are. So do we trust them to stay healthy?
I don't ever trust the 49ers to stay healthy.
No, me neither. So let's not be surprised if they fall off again, everybody, because they'll probably get injuries. If they have injuries to Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, or Deebo Samuels, that's when things seem to hit. That's when shit seems to hit the fan. But especially Trent Williams is so important to that team. So bubble wrap the guy all the way through practice. Make sure he doesn't get hurt. And as soon as you're up, take him out every time.
So you think the 49ers are back from their 3-game slide, or do you think this is a blip?
I think the 49ers, due to the nature of the NFC this year, are still massive contenders to be the NFC champions. The question is if they stay healthy, can they still do it? And I think if they lose Williams again, I think the answer is no. I wouldn't want to come up against that defensive front in the playoffs, though. That's where I'm at with it. I think I'd still put them ahead of the Cowboys to win the NFC Championship game. I think it's between the Lions, the Eagles, and the 49ers at the moment as the best team in the NFC.
The Lions needed 18 fucking turnovers to fucking win that game, but okay.
The Lions are amongst the best teams in the NFC. I think it's fair to say that right now.
Believe it. You can finish the show. They're not even going to win the North.
Who's going to win the North? The Vikings. Fair. But I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get to
last 3 games.
Let me just
Vikings, Cowboys, Vikings. They're going to fucking lose their last 3 games.
That is a nasty end of play. Just looking at it now. So you would say it's between the Eagles and the 49ers, or no? You have a different take.
Well, oddly, I'm the only one on this show that thinks the Cowboys are better than the fucking Lions, I guess.
I from when the Cowboys play good teams, through looking at it, when the Cowboys play good teams, they lose. That's the Dallas Cowboys right now.
And the Lions have a hard time beating bad teams. They have to have a shootout.
That's a fair point.
I don't know why I am really so sick of the fucking Lions hype. It kills me.
Well, I know why you're sick of the Lions hype. I mean, you are a Vikings fan.
No, it has nothing to do with that. It's when teams get overhyped by their fan base. And it's like, yay, you had one good half of a season in the last 30 years. Good for you.
It does smell it. The Lions does smell a little bit like putting up the mid-season banners, doesn't it?
They got
Like you're
lucky
putting
to
a
beat
banner
the
up mid-season.
Chargers, who are a really bad team.
Yes, we'll talk about the actual roster buildup of the Chargers and stuff when we get there, I imagine. But yes, they are. Just a final point on the 49ers. You top two teams in the NFC then for you?
Who?
The Eagles and the 49ers?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're back, aren't they? I think like the Jags are a good enough team as long as the 49ers stay healthy, which again, no guarantees that the 49ers stay healthy, but as long as they're healthy, then they're the top two teams in the NFC, I think.
All right. Well, let's talk about the future winners of the NFC North. That's the Saints and the Vikings. And I would actually be more comfortable with saying that if Cousins was still playing. And I know everybody's going to go, Josh Dobbs balled out. He went 23 for 34, 268, and a touchdown. Does everybody realize at halftime that he was 18 of 21 with 221 yards at halftime?
Not a great second.
5 fucking completions. 5 fucking completions in the second half.
Not a great second half. You're right. Maybe the Saints got used to the offense that they were running. The Saints are a good. Let's remember the Saints are a great defense here.
The reason they came back in that game, though, when the Vikings were up by 21, I don't know what some of the play calling was in the second half. Kevin O'Connell's got to figure that out. But also, it was Jameis Winston, who's boom or bust, and he was both in that game.
That was the perfect short view of Jameis Winston. If you needed an introduction to Jameis Winston's career in the NFL, you play the third and fourth quarter of that game. And then you're like, oh yeah, there's Jameis. That's the guy. That's the guy I fell in love with. Jameis
How do
Winston.
The Vikings always knock out the starting quarterback, when the backup's better? They did it to the Bears. They did it to the fucking Saints. Like,
that's an interesting, and that's a great point.
Like, fuck.
That's one of the hottest takes I've ever heard.
It's like you got the shittier quarterback starting, but yet let's just go and fucking hurt that guy. So the guy, and I shouldn't say better, Jameis is more talented. He just does dumber shit.
Yeah, I mean,
but talent-wise, Jameis blows Derek Carr out of the water with talent.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Carr went 13 of 18 for 110, and Jameis went 13 of 25 with 2 interceptions and 2 touchdowns.
It just like fucking blows my mind.
Vikings defense looked really good at most points of that game.
One of the top teams in interceptions in the NFL this year. Daniil Hunter leads the league in sacks. They have probably the best safety duo in the NFL right now, and that's PFF saying it, not me, as you guys decide to crush me on this. And DJ Wanham's got 6 sacks. Their linebacking core is flying all over the field, but yet people are like, it was the players last year. It wasn't the defensive coordinator. I think Brian Flores proved all of you fucking morons wrong. And what the talent was there. It was a really bad coach.
I think Brian Flores is one of the biggest success stories from the Belichick coaching tree. Like he's got to be right. Like Brian Flores, I don't know who's saying that Brian Flores doesn't make a difference as a defensive coordinator. He's an excellent defensive coordinator.
The argument was it was not Ed Donatell's fault last year with the defense. It was the players. And they kept saying it and saying it and saying it. And then with pretty much the same players, Brian Flores has that defense balling. And if you take out the first 3 games, the Vikings are top 5 defense in the NFL.
It's one of the things that I hate about NFL commentary. And it's like, people's inability to change their minds, to realize that they were wrong, and then go, okay, yeah, this Vikings defense looks legit. Because no matter where you go, you're still hearing the Vikings defense is a problem. And it's like, no, it's not. The Vikings defense is actually one of the best defenses in the league.
And that's it. I hope I'm the one who gets to come on here and change my tune about Josh Dobbs. Put a whole game together. I mean, literally in two games, he's got 300 and some yards passing, and everybody's like, he's the MVP of the league.
Yes. With Josh Dobbs, I think that what I like about Josh Dobbs is his ability to go into any team, it seems, and pick it up and make it look like in Arizona, he looked much feistier than what Arizona is worth having. But then you watch Kyler Murray actually, and Kyler Murray's there and they get a win. So actually, was it Josh Dobbs? But I mean, Kyler Murray is a decent quarterback. So
I'd rather have Josh Dobbs than Kyler Murray, but that's just me.
I like that he's come in and picked up the offense very well. It's very, very impressive. Is he still a backup quarterback in the NFL? If he's your starter, you're looking somewhere else, which for me then is the definition of a backup quarterback. Really, it's just we don't have enough good starting quarterbacks in the NFL.
Did you see your guy Florio?
What's he saying now?
He was wearing his Josh Dobbs jersey, his Vikings Josh Dobbs jersey, talking about how the Vikings are Super Bowl contenders and Dobbs could be the MVP. And this just proves that Florio's hate for Cousins is so unrealistic. And I hate Florio because when the Vikings, up until like 4 weeks ago, he's like, well, I grew up a Vikings fan, but I'm a pundit now, so I really am not a fan of a team. Now, all of a sudden, he's a Vikings fan again. Get the fuck out of here with that. Like, go away. We don't want you. Skull Nation took a vote. You got voted out. You lost your Skull Nation
card. Count.
Yeah, this is like Survivor. Your bitch ass got voted out. Hit it.
What a fucking great TV show, by the way, Survivor. I would love to see NFL pundits on Survivor. That'd be great. I think Greg Olson's probably winning due to the popularity vote. Like, he seems like the nicest guy, right?
And they have the best commercials. Those guys that with Greg Olson and the like different like funny commercials they have, that shit has me laughing.
I think it goes down to like Greg Olson, Tony Romo, and I don't know. All I know is Chris Collinsworth's probably getting voted out first. That's
I
all
fucking love Collinsworth, but you're right. Right after Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, Collinsworth is leaving. But I think Aikman and Buck get more hate.
Yeah, I love Collinsworth, by the way. I mean, the dude helped create PFF, and I think that's why other pundits don't like him. Anyway, this is taken left field. This is a different show. That's a YouTube short right there.
The bright spot for the Vikings was Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler looked good. He looked like he had a lot of burst. And if that fucking touchdown of his wouldn't have got called back on one of the worst holding calls I've seen, then he would have had a lot better stat line.
Yeah, I mean, Ty Chandler, TJ Hawkinson also went for 134 yards.
The reason Addison, TJ's talented and he's one of the best tight ends, but the reason he's balling, him and Dobbs both live in Tennessee and they throw together every summer.
That's good. That's positive. Jordan Addison, you basically have two number ones now with Jordan Addison. Like
Powell coming up huge at times.
Yeah.
Like,
have you seen Powell's been tanked now in projected fantasy points to 0.5 fantasy points because I'm guessing JJ's coming back this week?
Nobody announced it, but yeah, it looks like there's a good shot that Justin Jefferson's back.
I still don't understand why Powell doesn't then get rotation in this offense.
Well, then because him and Jalen Naylor are splitting that third receiver time.
Yeah. Brandon Powell pops more than Jaden Naylor, but yes.
Jalen Naylor runs better routes, though, and has great hands.
Yeah.
He's just been injured this year. And he was a rookie last year.
More reliable. Is this what you want now? Do you want the Vikings to win games and go to the playoffs and win the NFC North?
Only if Josh Dobbs shows me something.
Okay. But he's never going to be better than Kirk Cousins, though. So does he have to be better than Kirk Cousins for it to do that?
You don't have to be better than Cousins to win a Super Bowl on this team, but you definitely have to be a top 12 quarterback to get this team to the Super Bowl.
Okay, so see, this was the point. Like, your schedule is so nice now going into the end of the year.
Broncos, what is it? Without looking, it's Broncos, Raiders, Bengals, Lions, Packers, Lions, right?
Yeah, you've got the Bears on November the 28th as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the Broncos defense is playing a lot better. We'll go on to talk about them next. The Raiders are the Raiders at the moment.
I didn't look this up, but now that the Jags lost, do the Vikings have the longest winning streak in the NFL right now at 5?
Must do. Unless the Eagles, who did the Eagles recently?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. The Eagles are right behind them. And I don't remember what week the Eagles lost last.
Sorry.
It's very odd, though. They're up there is kind of the point. From 0-3 to a 5-game winning streak.
You're doing what the Bengals did last year. Oh no, the Eagles lost to the Jets on October 16th. So the Vikings must have it.
They might. Anyway, they're up there if they don't, which is crazy
anyway,
if you think about it, because the narrative is not that. Like you said, the pundits talking and like how they, like you still hear the Vikings defense is the issue. Like pundits only talk what's popular, right? So think about it. Nobody was talking about the Vikings until Josh Dobbs got there. And now every fucking channel you turn on, they're not even talking about the Vikings per se. They're talking about Josh Dobbs on the Vikings.
Yeah, and we were saying it. We were saying it 0-3. We were like, well, if the Vikings run the table here, which isn't out of the realms of possibility when you look at the schedule, then they still look like they'll win their division.
And since the beginning of the year, I have stood on this. I have said it before the season started, and I stuck with it. The Vikings are going to win all 6 games in the North. They're going undefeated in the North.
I think they're going to split against the Lions, but
they're not gonna. You're wrong, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can cause some trouble in the playoffs if you get there with Josh Dobbs. I think he's good enough, depending on who you play. But it's again, how much trouble do you want to call? Like, you know. But with JJ, Jordan Anderson, TJ Hawkinson, and then Brandon Powell and Naylor splitting the third, I think that's got to be one of the best wide receiver,
and
one of the best receiving.
Aren't you guys only a half a game ahead of us in the wild cards?
The Cowboys.
Yeah. I think you're only a half game ahead of us in the wild card.
I mean, we're 7 are we 6-3 or 7-3 now? Well, we've had our bye, so we have to be 6-3. Yeah, 6-3. So
yeah, half game.
Half a game, yeah. Yeah, it's annoying to think that we're getting pulled back into.
We're only a game and a half behind the Lions.
Yeah, it's irritating to think that we're getting pulled back into this fight for this fight for the wild card and stuff like that. But I think the Vikings, if you look at their schedule, are pretty nailed on to make the playoffs.
Yeah, the playoffs aren't my issue right now, but I agree with you.
Yeah, it's like, it's what do you want? What do you want?
They keep winning even though they've been injured. Like we were out without one of the best left tackles in the league. We're without the best wide fucking receiver in the league. All of our running backs keep getting fucking hurt. Our defense, we won that game with our best linebacker getting hurt in the middle of that game with Jordan Hicks. I think people underestimate that Vikings secondary or that Viking safety group too.
Yeah, I think one of the best defenses in the league, one of the most slept on teams. I think people's narrative, and we spoke about it at length in the preseason, was the Vikings winning loads of one-score games. That's not going to happen again. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL to have this record. And it's like, well, winning is a habit, and now they're winning these games, like, because their defense has improved.
We only play one-score games. Win or lose, we only play one-score games.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
You have a 21-point lead that you win by 8.
The Vikings are fascinating.
It's not even the 2 touchdowns in the second half by the Saints that pissed me off. It's the 2 2-point conversions they let them complete that pissed me off.
Yeah, should never have been a 1-possession game.
And it would help if Greg Joseph didn't suck fucking balls. Why are teams with shitty kickers not on the phone with Robbie Gould right now? One of the greatest kickers in NFL history is on the fucking street because the 49ers didn't want to pay him. You could get him for practically nothing to finish out the year for you. But let's just stick with a shitty kicker that we have to hold our breath every time they come out, even for an extra point.
Or as the Cowboys show, just go pick somebody up, like just go pick up a MLS player, and they'll just slot it all year.
Yeah, I was just watching something on why teams won't sign more Australian rules football players, and I'm trying to remember what exactly the reasoning was, and it made sense. So give me a second. I'll remember before the show is over. I have to think about that for a second, but it really made sense, and I have to remember. But let's get away from the Vikings before my blood pressure goes up, and let's talk about those fucking Houston Texans sticking it to the Bengals.
Called it. Big calls. Yeah. The Texans as a team are fantastic. Offensively, they're a fantastic team. To be honest, the game shouldn't have even been this close. Oh, the Texans still tried to Texans.
Before I forget again.
Go on.
So the reason they won't sign them even as punters is because they can't fill in for kickers because they're not used to kicking a ball off the ground. That's why they won't sign Australian rules football players.
All right. Well, that's why you sign loads of rugby players, though, isn't it? They only kick off the ground, but yes.
But then they can't fill in for your punter.
Right? Yeah, they can. In rugby, you do both.
Okay.
Whilst getting charged down and from different angles.
Nobody wants your fucking foreign asses on their team anyway.
Amon-Ra St Brown would say different.
Yeah, well, there's an exception to every rule, and he's only a little bit foreign.
Yeah.
He's not fully foreign.
Yeah, I wonder how long he spent in Germany. Okay.
Yeah, in the U.S. they don't hate Germany as much as we hate the U.K. and the U.S. either.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair enough. I mean, we deserve it, so that's okay.
There's really no UK hate. I just made that up, by the way, but okay.
The Texans, the game shouldn't have even been that close. They were that much better. They were that much better than them. And who would have thought at the start of the season that CJ Stroud should be, I don't know if he is, but he should be way ahead in MVP voting than Joe Burrow.
Well, CJ Stroud
that at the start of the season
has a good shot of winning Rookie of the Year, but there's no way he wins MVP.
I'm not saying he wins MVP. I'm saying he's ahead in MVP voting of Joe Burrow.
Yeah, he should be. I don't know this for a fact, but writers are very fickle, and I could see writers vote for these things, and they take past performance into account, which they're not supposed to, but they do.
Yeah, they also take the fact that the MVP this year shouldn't be a quarterback. By the way, there is no clear-cut quarterback for MVP, but then there's
not since Kirk went
players.
Down.
Yeah, well, good point actually. But there's players like Christian McCaffrey. There's players like Myles Garrett. There's these kind of guys, and you're like, they could be MVP. Tyreek Hill probably makes the biggest difference on the field as to most teams, bigger than a lot of the quarterbacks this year.
Well, then by that argument, Jordan Addison should be in that.
Yeah, I think Jordan Addison is a fair bet if he wasn't a rookie, and now JJ is going to come back. He probably will take second fiddle to JJ.
Now,
right?
does he still get more receptions though? Because they're still going to double and triple cover.
They double JJ.
So what do you do with Addison now? Maybe Addison's numbers just blow up with JJ being back. Maybe they don't. I'm just saying, but maybe that's.
Yeah, I think offensive rookie of the year is an interesting thing this year. It's CJ Stroud, really, if he keeps on the tie like that. But
If
really, it should be Jordan Addison.
It's fucking robbery.
If they don't give,
if they don't give it to CJ, it's a robbery.
I mean, Jordan Addison.
Yeah, but he's not a quarterback. He's not leading the shitty
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Like the Texans to, they're going to make the fucking playoffs.
They are going to make it. They are going to make the playoffs. And if the Jags play, so what I wanted to cover a little bit with the Jags and the 49ers, but just didn't get to, is how real are the Jags? Like, do we actually know who the Jags are? How big is Trevor Lawrence? Like, how big of a deal is Trevor Lawrence? CJ Stroud looks better than Trevor Lawrence right now. CJ Stroud looks like he could be the best quarterback in his division.
Yeah.
Just on the workload.
I always try to think of, if you put these guys in the top offenses in the NFL, who would play better. I still think Trevor Lawrence would play better in the top offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, I guess.
But that's
I'd see CJ Stroud as a 49er, and then Trevor Lawrence in the Chiefs, if that's who you class as a top offense in the NFL.
Put Trevor Lawrence on the fucking Vikings with that receiver.
Yeah.
Put Trevor Lawrence on the fucking Cowboys.
I'm not taking any Dak hate this week. The guy was fucking incredible.
No, that's not shitting on Dak, but literally put Trevor in that offense and see how it looks.
Yeah. But looking at it like this, you put CJ in that offense and you see how it looks. And I'm Trevor's not banging the drum.
Trevor's just more of a pure passer to me. And that's where I think he thrives in those. But I could be completely wrong. This is just all eye test and guessing, right? So
yeah, I'm not banging the drum because I was massive on CJ Stroud coming out. I'm not going to claim that because I wasn't. I thought Bryce Young was going to be better than CJ Stroud. I thought CJ Stroud would end up being like semi-mediocre.
I'm going to be honest. I was the guy who had no idea what to think of CJ Stroud. Remember, I kept going. He might be the one
Georgia game,
the one Alpha, or he might be the one Ohio State quarterback that changes my mind. And it was because of the Georgia game. And I just didn't know what to think of CJ Stroud.
Yeah. And now he's showing you what to think. And there are a few things in that game. There's some terrible, he overcomes some terrible play calling by the offensive coordinator because they just seem to refuse to run the ball to run the clock down. He overcomes
150 for fucking Singletary.
Yeah, that helps. Obviously, getting 150 rushing from Singletary. There's also that drop from Tyler Boyd for a touchdown as well in that game. There's the drop from Tyler Boyd. But then there was still 1 minute 40 on the clock, which is what he had the week before, where he could go drive them down the field and go get a winning touchdown anyway. So I'm loving what I'm seeing from CJ Stroud at the moment. And I really like the Texans and I like the way that they play football.
Yeah, I think they're doing great. I do think that DeMeco Ryans is doing a great job, but I think when it comes to coach of the year, if they don't give it to Kevin O'Connell, it's a fucking robbery for what he's done, especially having to play 3 different quarterbacks and he's still fucking winning. Yeah, I mean, look what he did. Look what he did after fucking 3 days with Josh Dobbs, walking him up to the line with 25 or more seconds left and going, all right, so TJ's running a fucking slant. Jordan's running this, and he's telling him what the concept is, what they're trying to do, pull this guy over, do this. I think the way that they're coaching, I think Kevin O'Connell is the most underrated coach in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I think it just goes along. I think the Vikings are doing well for being Underrated. I think the more underrated they are, the better. The Texans are a sign of what a good rebuild can look like if you give it time. That's what I think the Texans look like to me this year, because they've been rebuilding since Deshaun left, which is like getting on 3 years now. So it's a sign to those teams where give it some time and let the rebuild take its course.
Yeah, no fans patient enough for that shit though. That's the problem with the NFL.
Yeah, if your team's like Carolina and your team's like New England and your team, it's just let it run its course, so you don't have to make any unnecessarily massive moves for the coaches to keep their jobs and everything. But that relies on getting the right coach, making the right micro moves to make it up there. Are the Bengals done? What do we think about the Bengals now? Looking at this,
No, the Bengals are fine.
yeah. So lots of hate for the Bengals coming off this week. They're down to 5-4, which isn't a great record to have at this part of the season. But remember, a lot of those losses are because Joe Burrow was injured, and it wasn't that Joe Burrow looked bad this week. I mean, those 2 interceptions kind of killed him a little bit, but it wasn't that Joe Burrow looks bad. And going into tomorrow night's game, that's going to be a bigger barometer of where they are. But they have the Ravens, so let's say they lose to the Ravens, they're 5-5. You've then got the Steelers, Jags, Colts, Vikings, Steelers, Chiefs, Browns, which is a bit of a mixed bag of a run-in. I wouldn't be surprised if they miss the playoffs, but I would be like, just because of that run-in and the early start to the season, I'm like, okay, if they may have missed the playoffs. However, I'm not concerned from that point of view though, and blowing everything up if they miss the playoffs.
No, because like you were saying, it's the rough start we've been talking about is Joe Burrow being injured. His calf did not look like it was ready to play the first few weeks. I think a lot of their problem too is Joe Mixon is so hit or miss with his running.
Yeah, you can't rely on Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's one of those running backs. He's kind of like Alexander Madison's been this season, where he doesn't fall forward. So if you scheme everything right for him, he's having a big day. But if the scheme is off that week, he's regressed. And I know that's the same, but his drop off is huge.
When
Tony
you talk
Pollard
about
has had
people,
this year.
How pundits don't like to change their narrative, I've changed my narrative, and Alexander Madison is not a starting running back in the NFL, and it is time for the Vikings just to move on from Alexander.
Yeah, he doesn't fall forward, which is
He's such a better backup though, because he had 100-yard games every time Cook was injured.
yeah. It's like maybe it's like he needs to fight for something. Maybe he's got that kind of mentality, and then he falls forward.
Yeah, and he's missing wide open holes. That's a huge problem too.
Yeah, Tony Pollard has this problem also. The holes just aren't as wide open.
All right. Well, let's talk about a game that the Chargers just decided to hand to the Lions and say thank you for coming. Thanks for stopping by. We appreciate you coming. So here, have a win.
Yeah. Again, why are they holding on to Brandon Staley at this point?
They're just not going to fire him during the year. He's gone come next year. I would guarantee it.
But I just don't get holding. I don't understand holding on to him at this point of the year, though.
Because very few teams will fire somebody mid-season. And it doesn't make a lot of sense because you can't change the schemes. The schemes have to stay exactly the same when you fire. And then you have to hire from within because you can't bring in an outside guy to come in and run somebody else's system for a half a year. So most ownership is just like, all right, we're going to ride this out, and then he's done after this year.
Yeah, and it's in this game particularly, it's the defensive scheme that's the problem. You can't let a team rush for 200 yards. Like it's just not something you can let a team do. And since he's got there, since he has been their head coach, they've had problems against the run. Like really, really significantly poor running defense. Rushing David Montgomery 116 yards, which does include his touchdown run, which was just miraculous and makes up about 40 of those yards. But Jahmyr Gibbs, who looks like Jahmyr Gibbs has got nice potential coming off as well. And then Amon-Ra St Brown gets 9 yards off 2 carries as well. You can't let a team rush for 200 yards. It's just not something you can do.
Yeah. I was so mad at that game. I can't even fucking lie. I was so mad at that game.
Yeah.
Was so in my feeling. I'm still looking at the stat lines and pissed off. Like Herbert throws for 323 and 4 touchdowns.
How do you lose? So you looking at this game,
maybe the slowest receiver in the NFL get 11 receptions for 175. It is crazy how Keenan Allen always finds a way to get open, but you might be able to outrun him.
I did look. Was watching the coach film on this and just tracking Keenan Allen, and was just like, I still don't understand. He like walks open, but it's something that happens with Messi. It's something that people talk about with Messi a lot of the time. He covers more distance walking than any player in European football. Messi, when he was playing in Europe, he covers more distance walking.
American football.
No, but now in Europe, when he was playing in Europe.
You mean now in the US when he was playing?
Okay, well now he's in the US, yes, but I meant when he was playing in Europe.
Nobody remembers
walks
that.
More. He would walk more distance than any player, but it was because he was so far ahead, he didn't need to run. Is basically what they were getting into. Like he saved his sprint times, like he had the least sprints, but he just walks open. And Keenan Allen kind of does that. He like, if you're playing zone against Keenan Allen, he's finding the weak spot in that zone and just walking into it and being open. But then also if you put him man to man, he's got such crazy size and such strong hands that he'll just body you for that man to man and that 1-to-1 ball. So really difficult wide receiver to cover because of how slow he runs. A lot of stuff coming out now saying that Justin Herbert is the problem. Justin Herbert isn't the solution. And we kind of went into it a little bit last week, but what in that game suggested that Justin Herbert was the problem in LA? Well,
defense was fucking optional in that game. Everybody said, fuck it, we're not playing defense today.
Yeah, I don't understand how you blame Justin Herbert for them giving up 200 yards rushing. That's what I don't understand.
Well, Maddie, let's talk about your Cowboys getting a blowout against Tommy DeVito, who had the best fucking reel on Instagram. After the loss, walks in and says, what, no fucking ZD? Love that guy. Love that fucking guy already.
Yeah, love the guy. Can't play football, but love the guy, you know. I mean, he scored 17 more points on us than Daniel Jones did at the start of the season. So, pluses.
And I'm not saying he can or can't play, but can we tell if he can play? I mean, he's on maybe the worst team in the NFL right now.
No, that's a fair point. And to be fair, he had 14 completions for 86 yards, but that's because he had no time to throw, couldn't actually get the ball downfield at all. The Cowboys have just beat their division rivals, the New York Giants, 89 points to 17. And I just don't think it tells us anything, like 89 points to 17 across the two games. I don't think it tells me anything about the Cowboys at all. Dak Prescott was incredible. That was an amazing passing performance. Dak Prescott was wildly impressive,
Does it
as he
count?
was. That's what I mean. He was also wildly impressive against the Eagles as well. So maybe it counts, but I don't think it does. It doesn't tell me anything that I don't know about the Cowboys already, beating the Giants 49-17. What it does tell me is that Tony Pollard can't run the ball.
The only thing that makes me happy is that the rest of the world is finally catching up to my opinion on Dak Prescott.
Which is?
He's average at best.
I think average at best. I know it's against the Giants, but 26 of 35 for 404 yards and 4 touchdowns.
There was no way. I mean, he was throwing on air. It was like 7-on-7 drills out there.
Yeah. But then he also, sorry, just to go back to the Cowboys-Eagles game where they lost. But
I'm okay with you sticking up for him because the rest of the world finally agrees with me.
Yeah, 29 of 44 for 374 yards against the Eagles as well. Like, defender in the entire world. Sorry?
To win that game?
Do we win? Nope.
Oh, that was just okay.
Dak Prescott's in the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL.
No,
like
he's not.
Borderline top 10.
No, he's not. In
Borderline
the top
10. Borderline top 10. He's in that thing of like, you know how there's 15 top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL? That's why Dak Prescott
he's not in my 15 top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Dak Prescott is a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. Well, okay. Next show, let's get our quarterback rankings out and see where he is. Next show.
Gino is better than Dak, but we won't go there. Okay.
That's just
facts.
Not true. It's just not.
If Gino was on the Cowboys, they probably beat the Eagles.
I don't think that the Seahawks are that much worse than the Cowboys. Not going to lie. I think the Cowboys are quite a fraudulent roster. I'm being perfectly truthful.
You just told us at the beginning of the year how good the roster was.
And then I've watched them progress through the year and have changed my mind, as all good people should do.
So do you finally admit, besides Micah Parsons, your defensive line isn't as good as you thought it was?
The defensive line is excellent when they don't have to defend and run.
So when 80% of their job isn't there, they're great. Like,
yeah, incredible. As the Cowboys have been for a long time.
Well, if Tommy DeVito, when he doesn't have to throw, is amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop.
You know, everything comes with caveats.
All right. Well, let's talk about some Broncos Bills before we get out of here.
Yeah, so the Bills sacked their offensive coordinator. She's a interesting move. I think it's the start of they're about to fire everyone. Yeah, I think that's where it's got to be, right? But Ken Dorsey's gone.
And I love how everybody's like, fuck, Russell Wilson's back. It's like, on a bad defense, he threw for 193.
Russell Wilson is back playing complimentary football like he did to get to 2 Super Bowls in Seattle.
Oh, he was way better in Seattle.
He played complimentary football in Seattle, though. Was he better in Seattle because Seattle were better?
Well, he was better in Seattle because he was still more athletic.
Yes.
He's lost some of that athleticism that made Russell Wilson. Yeah.
The Denver wide receivers as well are not what everybody seems to think they are. They don't have a star wide receiver. They don't have a number one. Cortland Sutton is not a number one. Jerry Jeudy has been disappointing.
They turned down a 3rd and a 5 for Jeudy.
Yeah, I would have taken it personally.
Well, the Bills did everything they could to give that game away, and they did it. They gave that game away with turnover after turnover after turnover. Josh Allen, I wish people would stop praising him now and maybe call Josh Allen out for being Josh Allen. And Stephen A reports Diggs wants out. Really, really. I was telling Buffalo fans the day they traded for this dude, have 2 bad seasons in a row and see what the fuck happens.
Honestly, we've had a really good season so far this year in calling shit out from the jump, right? I'm amazed at the Stephon Diggs thing, but I called at the start of the year the Bills aren't going to make the playoffs, and it doesn't look like they are. Who's okay in your quarterback rankings? Is Josh Allen still above Dak Prescott?
Absolutely.
Okay, I agree. I'm putting that out there. I was just wondering.
I think Josh Allen's problem is not so much that he doesn't have the talent. I think he doesn't have the coaching. He doesn't have coaches to reel him back in and go, fucking stop doing that. You don't have to win the game on every play. But the problem is if Josh Allen's not the one winning the game, they have nobody else to rely on to win that game.
Yeah. Their roster. James Cook, when they gave the fucking ball to James Cook, he looked so good. They were running the ball.
He's definitely related to Delvin with them fumbles.
Yeah, that's one fumble. But he's just, they can run the fucking ball, the Bills, and they just haven't been at all this so far this year. Yeah, I mean, with the injuries on the defensive side of the ball for the Bills, with their offense having to always run through Josh Allen, and Josh Allen has, I'd say, a 70% to 30% rate of losing you a game to winning you a game at this current stage of where he's at mentally. Because we all know he has the ability to win games single-handedly. We all know that. But he's more leaning into the giving the ability to lose a game single-handedly. It's, yeah, in Buffalo, I'm not sure what you do there. Like, are you sure that this is what you want in New York? You can come be the head coach for us this time. Like, do you call him again and see what happens?
Yeah, I don't know, but they got to do something. They got to fire everybody and start over after this year. And all those tweets from Trayvon Diggs are all coming from Stephon Diggs. Your brother is not tweeting that shit out if your brother doesn't want you to.
Yeah, and trust me, and obviously Trayvon is sat on the couch for the whole season, so he's more than happy to do it. So that's good. But yeah, let's get him in. Let's get him in Dallas. Him and
now,
CeeDee
here's the
Lamb would
thing,
be
though,
nasty.
too, is what is the trade value for a guy who's been a problem on the only 2 teams he's ever been on? Soon as things don't go your way, you become an issue. What is the trade value for a guy like that is the crazy thought.
Yeah, sorry, just kind of running through the model in my head.
The Vikings traded him for a first and a third.
Yeah, I don't think you're getting a first for. How do you know how long he's got on his contract or anything like that?
No, didn't he just re-up that contract?
I'm pretty sure just re-upped this year.
That he's getting paid huge money. And don't get me wrong, Stephon Diggs can ball out. But do you want to deal with the distraction of Stephon Diggs?
Yeah, I suppose it's where he like Stephon Diggs in Kansas City makes
he wouldn't even
big
talk
enough
to
deal.
Josh Allen and his coaches. Yeah, he wouldn't even talk to Josh Allen and his coaches when he first came back. Yeah, he's signed through 2027.
So you've got to give up the trade value to get him out. Maybe a second, maybe.
So there's a potential out after 24, but they would still have to pay him $22 million on dead cap. But moving forward, he's got 2024, $22 million, 2025 guaranteed $22 million, 2026 $21 million, and 2027 $20 million. Those are cap hits. He's getting paid 18, 19, 18, 19, but his cap hits are in the 20s for the next 4 years.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams where he makes a big enough difference where you say, okay, yeah, I'll spend the second. Like, if the Chiefs had Stephon Diggs this year, with the defense that they've got, with the run game that they've got, and obviously with the quarterback coaching tandem that they've got, you're like, oh shit, the Chiefs are. And I still think the Chiefs are the Chiefs. I think they've won this bye week as far as I'm concerned. The Chiefs.
But you're talking about a guy who in like 2 weeks is going to be 30 years old.
Hasn't affected his production at all, though, has it? Whoever he's signing for,
but like running backs, receivers just fall off a cliff one year.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And with all the receivers that come out in the draft now, because of the way college is, do you pay that for stuff? I don't know. I'm not, you know what I mean? I just don't know if he's worth that type of money.
I think it's what does Stephon Diggs want? Right? It's money.
Well, I think he wants to be on a contender and get paid.
Yeah. Maybe it's location for him. Maybe he's just cold. Maybe he just doesn't like Buffalo and Minnesota. Maybe that's it.
Well, let's go send him down by Justin Herbert and see how fast he wants out of fucking San Diego or LA too.
LA. Well, you know, there's a team where he would make a difference. That's a good assessment point for Justin Herbert.
I wouldn't do that. See, you got to have an established quarterback too. You can't bring him in with a young quarterback. Like I would never put him in a locker room with CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I like the way that Houston are made up in. It's all young. I think I like the way that they work. I think it's got to be the teams that I look at is the Dallas Cowboys because of his brother and the market and don't get me wrong.
You know who's going to make that deal, right? Howie Roseman is going to figure out how to make that deal. It'll be Howie Roseman.
I'll cry. I will honestly cry. I don't understand how Howie Roseman is. He's a superhuman. The guy is basically. Does he have like illicit photos of the coaches that is he blackmailing teams to get this roster, like to get these moves? Because I don't get it. Like he's got to have the dirt on the GM in Tennessee, right?
AJ Brown, Smith, and fucking Stephon Diggs lining up. Could you just imagine that?
Not going to think about it. And obviously the Canadians and obviously everybody's favorite wide receiver a few weeks ago, Julio Jones, who's.
Oh, you got muted as you were shitting on Julio. What were you saying about Julio?
It's
I didn't even do it.
Julio heard me. I was saying Julio Jones, everybody's favorite wide receiver a few weeks ago, who's not done anything in Philly, but you know.
They don't need him to yet. We had this discussion in the chat. In the playoffs or an important game, if he gets them a touchdown in the red zone, he was worth every fucking dime they spent on him. And he's just a red zone threat. And the problem is that they score from outside the red zone or they run the ball, but he'll get in there, big body. He'll be better than any tight end they could have out there. Don't worry about it. Did you guys play them again or did you play them twice?
No, we play them again.
Yeah, Julio's going to be the one to get the game-winning touchdown now that you said that, with fucking no time left on the clock.
Didn't even get a single reception the last time we played against them.
Does that matter for the next game? I didn't realize that if you didn't catch something the game before, you weren't allowed to watch. Just because all the shit you talked, he's going to get the game tie game. No, you know what? You guys will be winning by 5. There'll be 13 seconds left on the clock. Julio Jones back of the end zone, touchdown, dagger in the heart of Dallas, and just because you talked all that shit.
Do you know what I would hate more? If, because I talked all of that shit, Howie Roseman secured Stephon Diggs for the next 3 years.
Oh, that happens
That's why we
after.
came on.
That's after.
Oh, right, okay.
After the Julio puts the dagger in your chest.
Absolute
Oh,
horror
all
show.
right, Maddie. Well, we made it through another episode. We got some good games coming up. We don't have to pick any games today because we're done with those foul.
We have to pick Thursday's game.
Oh yeah, Thursday's game. Wow, but we don't have to pick those early games because that foul foreign games are gone. Overseas games are done. It's not your guys' fault. It's too fucking early. It's way too fucking early. It's nothing against Germany or the UK. It's against the time they air those fucking games is a problem.
Yeah, they decided they want their own window for the European games because actually for the European games it's in a weird time anyway.
If you live in Pacific Northwest or anything that's on Pacific time in the US, that fucking game starts at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, what would make more sense is the 4:00 window because that's then 9:25. That window starts. It's like 9:00 that window in the UK, which is 10:00 in Germany, and then you have a night game in London and Frankfurt, which would be way fucking more fun.
Yeah, and I'm all for that because then I don't have to fucking worry about like early ass games. Nobody wants to watch football at 8:30 in the morning when they're still supposed to be sleeping. And then if you live in California or Vegas, it's 6:30 in the morning.
That's what I have to do at the moment. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Fuck that.
Tonight's game, what's the point spread? Thursday's game, what's the point spread? Do you know?
Pulling that back up right now. I was doing some other shit on my phone. Well, looking at my notes. It is Ravens favored by -4. And before we get into that, and we'll talk about it later, but it baffles me that everybody wants to like ride the Vikings bandwagon, but yet they're dogs against Denver. But okay, that's a whole nother thing to just think about for Sunday.
Right, betting it.
All right, so the Bengals are traveling to the Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 4, so I still think that the Ravens win this game. I think they bounce back. Give me the Ravens -4.
Yeah, I'll take the Ravens -4 on this one as well. I think that the Ravens defense is fantastic, and I think they're to put up 31 points, and I know some of it came from defensive things, but to put up 31 points against the Browns is still a good offensive outing. So, yeah, give me the Ravens -4 on that one.
Oh, and I see here that you still don't have to play it. You guys get another bye this week. The Cowboys are the only team that got 3 byes this year. They got their regular byes, and they play the Giants, and now they play fucking Carolina. But you get 3 byes
straight after
year.
them. We've got Washington the next week as well, which could be fun with Sam Howell playing the way he does. But yeah,
fuck, I didn't realize that the Cowboys, Jerry Jones bought 3 bye weeks this year.
We got three straight byes, a 3-week bye. I didn't even really, but is there any point in watching them? But I said that about against the Cardinals, and we lost that game, so won't do that again.
Yeah, that's still in the groups. Every time a Cowboy fan opens his mouth, you just see a Cardinals response come by.
Yeah, fair enough. That's why I always say.
Actually, I'm excited about we're gonna have this and not that doesn't guarantee it'll be a good game, but it's definitely a good matchup for Thursday night football.
Finally, a good game on Thursday night football. It feels like we've been severely lacking this year in the standalone games.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous, but the Vikings have back-to-back primetime games coming up, so.
Oh, well, Kirk Cousins doesn't play there anymore, so you don't need to worry about primetime.
It's that I have to wait, so it drives my anxiety out of the fucking world. I'm like, I like noon games because I just want them over with.
Yeah, the Cowboys never play noon games, so I'm good. I'm happy that we get one midday because that means I can watch the Cowboys at 1 a.m. rather than at 4:30 a.m.
Yeah, that's always good. That's always a good time. Right now, you're 13 hours difference than us too. It's weird time.
Yeah, it's currently 2:45 a.m. right now where I am.
All right, well, let's get out of here so you can go to bed before you fall over while you're on the fucking show.
I know I've got to teach in 4 hours.
All right. Well, on that note, everybody, thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. You're kind of an asshole. Make sure you check out Well Beyond the Arc. They're back. Montana and David are fucking killing it. And Manoli will be popping in time to time when he has some time this year. So make sure you check those out. MMA Underground every Tuesday. One world, one love. Deuces.
Cheerio.